So please, put your hands together for my brother, Owen Benjamin. Woo! Right there. Woo!
Make some noise for my brother.
He still smells like pine and gasoline. My brother's so awesome. When I first came here, he got me into tree work, and I got him into comedy, and he's way better at comedy than I am at tree work. I mean, this is such an honor, and this is very touching that you all came out here, man. This means a lot, so I appreciate it. We're in Saranac Lake together. Let's have a great show. Yeah. So last night I was gonna stay in, because you know it was game night. I was gonna stay in, hydrate. And the Bears started showing up. And at first I was telling the Bears, I'm like, I can't go out. It's game night. You know, I gotta read up, gotta practice the piano, I gotta hydrate. And it's like, oh, no worries, mate. This one dude's like, no worries, my flight from Australia was only 16 hours. I was like, someone else was like, yeah, Scotland, yeah, we're here. Yeah, give it up Scotland, give it up Australia. People flew in. The nearest airport is 2.5 hours away. Like, you can't find this town without like a weird mythic story. It's like, you gotta go down the notch unless there's a wizard, you know, it's... You know, like Coddington flew into Plattsburgh, and he goes, the airport closed, I had to sleep in a car. He's like, I didn't know airports could close. I'm like, bro, try to get gasoline inside the Blue Line after 2 in the morning. They're like, you gotta burn your clothes, bro. And so the Bears are coming in, so I started thinking about it. I'm like, I can't. They came, you know, so I'm gonna go out. I'm gonna hang out with them. I might as well hit Grizzle Tees and hydrate, you know? And so we go to Grizzle Tees, and, you know, 5-6 beers later, the vodka comes out. And we're having an absolute blast. My brother's there, just insane. Like, everyone's way cooler than I even imagined. Herman's way more Asian than I ever imagined. Repping Asians, you know, and Saranac Lake's never seen an Asian before, so they're very impressed. They've heard about you guys. And so we started doing shots of vodka, and vodka's when your night changes. Like, beer doesn't really affect you. You can drink beer and, you know, design a building, you know, you just drink beers. But vodka, I got home, you know, vodka. And my wife was in bed, and I crawled into bed, and she felt the big bear in there, and, you know, she started getting a little grabby, started getting a little frisky. My wife's a beautiful woman, but I realized that the vodka had killed my boner. I couldn't get a boner. And super drunk, I just whispered in her ear, the Russians have influenced my erection. What can I tell you about Saranac Lake? We just got Uber. We got Uber, baby. And you don't need the app because there's only 2 drivers. It's Johnny and Ben. So you can just text them. Just be like, where are you guys? Because there's no reception here anyway. The Uber app it just says, where are you? And you're like, Bloomingdale. They're like, what is that? I don't know what that is. It's a place of healing. This is a little known fact about Saranac Lake. By the way, the entire population is 3,000 people, so 20% of the population is in this room right now. And so the way Saranac Lake got put on the map, it's actually a really beautiful story. Tuberculosis was I'm so jaded that I didn't even realize that would sound funny. Only Saranac Lake people are like, it's beautiful. So tuberculosis. And it's like, what? I'm from Australia, mate. We just have koala bears and avocados. So tuberculosis was killing a lot of people in New York City. And there was this really wealthy doctor, and he got tuberculosis, and they said, you know, you only have a few months to live. And he was like, I'm gonna go someplace beautiful. And it's so beautiful here. Like, I came to Saranac Lake because of my brother. I wanted to live my life with my brother. And yeah. But I fell in love with Saranac Lake because of the people and the beauty and the fact no one judges you for drinking beers every single day. So this wealthy doctor has only a few months to live. And so he's like, where do I want to be? And he's like, someplace beautiful. Forget the city. I'm going to go north. I'm going to go to Saranac Lake. I'm going to look at beautiful mountains and just smell the air. And guess what? He didn't die. Dude didn't die. And everybody was just like, wait, we don't have to die of this? And so, what's his name? John Lewis Stevenson, is that his name? Dude who wrote, the writer? What's his name? Robert Louis Stevenson. His brother John, that's my guy. He's a good guy, he's a roofer. But Robert Louis Stevenson, his little gay little brother, he also got tuberculosis, and he thought he was gonna die, and he called up his buddy. He's like, what's going on at Saranac Lake, Doc? Can I get some of that fresh air? And he's like, come on up. And then everyone started coming up. Einstein was up here, Mark Twain. You know, World War I vets from mustard gas all came here to heal their lungs. I'm dead serious, because the air here is so good that people just stop dying. And there's these open air cottages here. It's called a cure cottage, and the porch is open air, even though it's like negative 40 in the winter. People just still sit there. They're like, healing. And this is the funniest thing about Saranac Lake. So tuberculosis is no longer a real factor. And but we still have these porches. So you know what we do on them now? We drink. And that's how we cure our sickness, as we drink beers. And this is the beauty about Saranac Lake, is you just drink beers. It's like, you know, at first I didn't understand some of the lingo. You know, I'd be on the road and some dude would call me, he's like, hey buddy, I can plow out your wife. And I'm like, no, my heart started racing. He's like, just give me some beers. I'm like, what kind of arrangement are you looking for, guy? Because people do nice things for each other here for just beers, man. You know, people spend all day, like what my brother was saying, like digging you out if you get stuck somewhere, because we have a common enemy. It's called winter. So there's a very real unifying factor when it's just, you go out, like the natural world is death, and you have neighbors, and everyone's like, we can do this together. And then there's something called Winter Carnival, where it's a parade for no reason. I'm pretty sure it's the census to see who's dead. And people just walk in this freezing cold, pretending it doesn't hurt them. They're like, this is great. Their tears are just freezing to their face. And so me and my wife come here. Best decision we made to leave LA, because once we had a baby, yeah. Because having a baby changes the game. That's when reality sets in. All the nonsense kind of disappears. You know, you have that baby, and then all your crazy friends sound real crazy. You realize there's not a lot of fresh water. There's only one real road in and out of the place. You know, everything's a parking lot. No one has a motorcycle. No one has a gun. You know, there's no soil. You're like, what is going on in this insane place? So we left. We put family first, which is what I recommend everybody do. And then we came here, and my wife, and we bought a house. We bought a house that was, it was a dump with a lot of potential, just like when Amy met me. You know, just a disaster, but great bones. And she watches a lot of HGTV, which is, what do the people say these days? Problematic, is that a word? And, because HGTV convinces women that all you need is a little elbow grease and an insane amount of money, and now your kitchen will look just the same except weirder. And the way they sell it, the way they always sell it, the way they sell it, thank you. The way they sell, someone connected. And the way they sell it, they always go, space for entertaining. In Saranac Lake, it's called a parking lot and beers. You plow someone out and you drink beer. But I like that. You know, I like making stuff better with her. And she's a brilliant, beautiful engineer. Like, she's a stay-at-home mom. She's a master's in engineering. And yeah, the feminists hate that shit. They're like, why did you quit the race? She's like, because I have a son. And they're like, you bitch. But so we started doing work on our house, and it's very difficult doing work on a house in Saranac Lake, and I'll tell you why. Because in LA, we had something called Mexicans. And it made work really easy, because they don't have any papers, so they don't have a lot of bargaining chips. And all they have is work. If they're just standing in a parking lot, it's because someone hasn't asked them to work yet. They're like, trabajo? You know, and then you come here, and everyone here can do everything but has no interest in it. Like every guy I meet, dude, I'll be out all night with all these dudes. And I'm like, dude, I'm thinking about building this big thing. He's like, dude, I'm a stonemason and a carpenter and a welder. And I'm like, I'll pay you to do it. He's like, not really looking for work these days. He's like, I'm good. Because you don't live to work here, you work to live. You get enough money to like climb ice or some shit, and then you're good. And that's why there's remarkably happy people here for looking so stoic all the time. They're like, but inside they're like giddy. And, but we did get people to work on our house, and there's some insanely good workers here and just wonderful craftsmen, but there's so few people that to find them, it's almost like you have to answer riddles. You know, like I'm like, I need a roofer, because some stuff I'm trying to learn off YouTube. Roofing isn't one of those skills. You can't watch YouTube videos and learn how to roof. That's how dad dies. So I was like, who can do roofing? And someone at the bar was like, you want the best roofer in the whole world? I'm like, by world, do you mean this little area? They're like, isn't that the world? And I'm like, yeah, I want the best roofer. And he's like, then you're gonna want One-Eyed Gary over there. And it's like the crowd kind of parts. There's just some dude. He's like, oh, One-Eyed Gary's the best roofer in the world. I'm like, when can I get him to start? They're like, he doesn't work in the winter or deer hunting season. You can't get One-Eyed Gary then. And he won't come before 10, and he leaves by 3. He doesn't have any of his own tools. And you got to pick him up because he has 11 DUIs. And his girl's going to come to the job site, and they're going to fight like scary bad. But he's the best. I'm like, how did he lose his eyes? Like, he's got 2 eyes. I'm like, why is he called One-Eyed Gary? They're like, what's going on with you? And I realized the nicknames here have nothing to do with who you are. And I'm from Oswego, New York, which isn't as, yeah. Oh, you know Oswego? Nice. Oswego, New York isn't as, it's a little more what's that? Plattsburgh? You don't like Plattsburgh? You like Oswego better? What do you like, the 3 nuclear power plants or the opioid addiction? So Oswego is, like, Saranac Lake doesn't have the beaten down vibe that Oswego does. Like, here people still feel free. They're like, you know, we can do whatever we want. At Oswego, people are just like, you know, because we didn't have land tax. And people don't understand how scary that is. I'm not big into tax myself, but zero tax is a little jarring. You know, that's like a weird red flag. We didn't have land tax, guys. The federal government. So we're like, who do we pay the money to? And the government's like, don't even worry about it, guys. Don't sweat it. We're like, why? They're like, you see those 3 nuke plants that you guys let us build here? You ever read The Hunger Games? You dudes are District 12, so keep pounding the Capitol. Don't ask any questions, and someday you'll get yourself a little Mockingjay. And there's a lot of agriculture in central New York. A lot of people don't realize that. There's a lot of agriculture, a lot of apple orchards, a lot of muck farms, a lot of soybean farms. And a lot of people worked on the soybean farms. You know, we'd work on those soybean farms, eat soy as far as the eye can see, but we never ate that soy. You know, because the old timers, and we listen to the old timers would be like, boys, don't eat the soy. And we're like, why? We're hungry. They're like, because it'll make your cock and balls fall right off your body. And it seemed like a tall tale, but it wasn't worth the risk, so we didn't touch the soy. And we'd always see the soy just growing and then leaving. It was just and we dream about where the soy went. We're like, maybe there's a big world out there. Where's all this soy go? Don't they know about their cocks and their balls? And it was always a mystery to me where the soy went. And then 2 weeks ago, I performed in Burlington, Vermont. And so I go into Burlington, Vermont, and I look around, and I'm like, this is where all the soy went. They're just pumping soy over there. And everyone's a vegan. And I have no problem with veganism. If you want to eat that way, God bless, it's good for you. You know, make choices in your life. Make a sacrifice, have a code. I love it, I'm proud of you. This is what I don't like about you, the fact that you think it makes you at all better than anyone. You know, people just tell you they're vegan and then they're looking at you like you're supposed to give them something, you know? They're like, yeah, I'm a vegan. Yeah, I'm a vegan. I don't eat cantaloupe. No one knows that because I don't tell anyone. Because I don't think it matters at all. I don't eat cantaloupe. I think it's slimy. But I've never told anyone. Like I'll have a buddy be like, yeah, we're doing breakfast. You want to come? You'd never hear me be like, do they serve cantaloupe? And he'd be like, well, I don't know. I'm like, then find another place. Impress me more. You have not thought about me. Find a no cantaloupe place. There's this one dude in Burlington. I think it's the same. I met the same guy in Portland. Maybe it was a twin. But it was like Portland, Oregon. Maine's got some really good people. There's good people in Burlington. There's good people in Oregon. There's good people everywhere, but it's just the vibe in general. So this guy comes up and he's like, so you want some tofurkey? And I'm like, what's tofurkey? He's like, it's like turkey, but it tastes like sand and it's really expensive. It's tofurkey. I'm like, did that sales pitch get you, guy? He's like, it tastes a little like turkey, but bad. And yeah, just eat it. It's really expensive. I'm like, why not just eat a turkey? He's like, because I'm cruelty-free. I'm like, bro, this conversation is not cruelty-free. I hate your mustache. Why is it twisty? Do you own a train company? He's like, it's cruelty-free. I don't believe in cruelty. I'm like, you eat the soybeans. You think that's cruelty-free? You ever see a farm combines? Those are just twirling blades. They're just guillotines for rabbits. Just. You don't think there's little rabbits living in those fields? What do you think happens to them? There's blood on every one of those beans, guys. The little rabbits are like, oh, no way. Look at all these farms. You can't get away from death. When you eat, you have to kill. You eat a carrot, that you had to kill that carrot to eat that carrot. And that carrot could have been a good guy. He's just growing in the dirt, putting down roots, getting nice and orange, real proud of it. And somebody just rips it out, you know. I feel a lot worse eating a carrot than a turkey because I know for a fact turkeys are total assholes. We have wild turkeys here. They just walk through the yard like dinosaurs, like, rah! If we were bigger, we'd rip your head off, you know? Same with chickens. Eat the chickens. Eat those chickens. We have 10 chickens. Me and my wife have 10 chickens. Let me tell you something about chickens. Dickheads. Eat them. Especially roosters, man. Roosters are psychotic. I don't think people realize how insane roosters are. A rooster, when they see the sun start rising, they just start screaming. You know, like in cartoons, they made it so cute that we never really think about what it is. Like, the sun's rising, it's like, doo, 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 doo. You know, and the colors start coming, and the rooster's like, ah! Ah! It's like, what? And so, if that was a human being, that's an insane human being. The sun just, ah! It's kind of something One-Eyed Gary would do. But so one time we accidentally got 4 roosters because sometimes the eggs are mislabeled. And so we got 4 roosters, and you're supposed to have 1 max, and we had 4. And let me tell you about roosters, rapey. Rapey, they're just clawing and pecking and raping all day long. They're all Weinsteined out. You know, Harvey Weinstein or Weinstein? You know, it's just, and when there's 4 of them, it's just like a pack. It's like just gang rapes. I don't know how else to put it. Don't shoot the messenger, guys. I'm telling you what's happening out there. You know, I'm protective. That's why I'm trying to bring this to light, you know. And so every morning we'd see the hens, poor hens, these awesome hens who lay eggs for us. And in the winter, you know, I'm an egg pimp now. There's a few that are holding out. You know, we have 10 chickens. We go in, we get 7 eggs. I'm like, bitch, where's my eggs? I got a bottom, bitch. She's like, but we had, I just made that up. That's a funny bit. But so in the morning, you know, it'd just be a boy band of screaming at the sun, ah, ah, you know, and then you see the hens come out, and they'd be missing feathers from the rapes, you know, just covered in cum. And yeah, I know. They'd look like Gwyneth Paltrow up for an Oscar. She's just like, you know, and Meryl Streep's in the corner like, I didn't see shit. And Harvey Weinstein's like, that's right, you didn't see shit. You want money, you want gold, you let me do what I do. And Oprah's in the corner like, he seems great. But unlike the men in Hollywood, I'm protective of hens, and I'll do something about it. So me and my brother, it's so funny that people think I'm so masculine these days. My brother's 1,000 times more of a man than I am. So, of course, I call him up with my gay little piano fingers, and I'm like, my brother, what do we do about these roosters? He's like, we chop their heads off, brother. So, long story short, we decapitate all of them, but it's a really funny story. So, the first rooster, they're cocky. That's why it's called being cocky. They're literally called cocks. They're like, what's up, big bear? You're not a real bear. And I'm like, so we get the first one, and he's talking shit. He's like, yeah, she deserved it. Look at her. And the hen's like, whoa. And I'm like, why don't you tell the girls to come out? There's something to watch. And so the hens come out. I'm like, is this the guy that hurt you, ladies? And they're like, yeah, that's him. That's the one who pecked me in on. And now the rooster's starting to realize what's going on. You know, he's on a pretty medieval-looking stump. And I'm holding a Fisker's hatchet, very reliable. And now he's starting to beg for his life. He's like, what are you doing, man? I'm like, I'm about to execute you because you're a rapist. You know, and he's like, I've been living my life as a gay man. I'm like, this ain't House of Cards, bitch. This is real life. It's Sarah Lake. He's like, and so just, boom, just head off. And his little claw hands, they kept raping after he was dead. He's like just grabbing boobs with no head. He's like, ah. And now the hens are feeling good. They're like, that's what happens. And then they start getting pride. The next one, my brother named Elvis for some reason. I know why, because he wanted to say Elvis had left the building after he chopped his head off. It was hilarious. He was like, Elvis has left the building, and his head flew off. And then the hens start getting really excited. So they start a movement. You know, it sounded like clucking, but I just heard, me too, me too, me too. And so they started hashtag me too. And here's the funny thing about hashtag me too. And I'm just going to be straight up with you guys. I'm 37 years old, and I grew up with normal phones. And so when I see a hashtag me too, I remember it by a different name when I was younger. And I don't know if you guys know what I'm talking about. Yeah. It's pound me too. And I find that very confusing because I want to be on board. I can't stand predatory men, you know? And then you see these women trying to be activists, and they're like, enough is enough, pound me too. And I'm like, how horny are you, lady? And so everyone's saying, checking out where I'm at here. So Burlington, yeah. So Burlington was an exciting place. That's the home of Bernie Sanders. So don't get me wrong. I wanted to like Bernie. I liked him for like a month because I didn't know what he was yet. You know, because I lived in LA for 16 years. I love old Jews that promise the world, you know? Because they sound awesome. Everything they say, it sounds like they're like the soup and, you know, they sound like Larry David, very likable cadence. I'm a quarter Jewish. I love that part of the family because they make everything sound interesting. It's like my foot and the sock, and you're like, that's great. But then you read it. Read a Bernie Sanders speech. He sounds exactly like Bane from Batman. He's like, all you people, you know, it's just, it's like, the rich have had enough. The corrupt, the 1% of the 1%. We will take their money. Free education for the people. Free health care for all you morons that are so fucking stupid you'd vote for me, and believe me. So many people are pissed right now. Because this town loves Bernie Sanders, so I know a lot of you guys right now are like, how dare you? I don't know. How dare me? Because I grew up in a different time when people knew socialism led to genocide, but now it's like real cool now. It's like, no, socialism's the shit. I'm like, Google Stalin, then Google Mao, then Google Castro, and they're just like, Tofurky. And I'm like, because I get scared of socialism because a lot of it is, you know, it's an economic time bomb, you know. It's a Ponzi scheme. And that's why I'm scared of the Canadians. Like, I think Trump's building the wall on the wrong border. I'm a big fan of the Mexicans. They work their ass off. They're basically like brown Irish people. My wife's half Mexican. Her dad was a hardworking little man. And because they're just like Irish people. They're Catholic, they work hard, they love soccer, they drink a lot. They may have a teardrop tattoo for no reason. They're good guys. I understand border security, but come on, if you're scared, you got to look at the snow monkeys up north. Because when it goes down, it's going to go down hard, and those little ice backs up there are going to scurry across the border. But the beauty about Canadians is you don't need to build a wall because they're broken from socialism. So you can just do a little yellow line in the snow. Just say, hey, get back. And they go, okay. Because their leader is this guy named Justin Trudeau. He's basically if Hansel from Zoolander was a leader. He's like, he's not even interesting enough to be evil. He's just a fucking retard. You know, he's just like, and he'd be like, don't say retard, it's people. You're like, but I'm friends with a lot of Canadians. A lot of them are good people. I just think that their system's a little messed up because they jump across the border to use our health care because the whole 9-month wait for cancer treatment isn't exactly the utopia they were once promised. But, and they're keeping Alaska hostage up there. And they're always talking shit about, I'm only talking shit about Canadians because they talk a lot of shit about us. So I was like, America's so stupid, eh? I'm like, then why do 80% of you guys live within 100 miles of us like a homeless people next to a grate, like a heat grate, that's trying to get a spark of our market economy to light up your afternoon? You maple leaf eating snow monkeys. You're like, eh? But a lot of them are good individuals. You know, and then you got the French Canadians, which are just the worst of both worlds. Because the French are really arrogant, but they have unbelievable food. So you got to put up with it, where they're like, hello. And you're like, hey. They're like, you don't know Monet? And you're like, bro, I was working on cutting down trees with my brother all day, and it's -30. I don't know Monet. They're like, you don't know Monet? But then they're like, croissant, and you're like, oh yeah, you can keep hanging out. That's like the most insanely good thing I've ever had. They're like, yeah, it is. And then you go to French Canada, and it's the worst of both worlds, because they have all the arrogance of France, but they have no food. They're like, poutine? And you're like, what is it? They're like, it's like if you're really stoned, and you get fries and just put a bunch of cheese and shit on it. And I'm like, no. How do you say no in France? But I'm friends with a few of them because, you know, I'm friends with a lot of different types of people and friends with this French-Canadian guy. He's a dick. But, you know, we like hanging out. Sometimes he's hilarious. Inadvertently, I think. And I like helped him move. And he was a dick. He's like wearing a scarf in the summer. He's like, you don't wear a scarf? I'm like, and that's the thing about being a comedian is people a lot of times will pitch you jokes. He's like, hey, comedian, I have a joke for you. I'm like, awesome, man. What's the joke? He goes, what do you care? Someone who speaks 2 languages. I'm like, bilingual? He's like, bilingual. He's like, what do you call someone who speaks 3 languages? I'm like, try. He's like, trilingual. He goes, what do you call someone who speaks 1 language? I'm like, what? He goes, American. And I thought about it. I wasn't mad at him. I know that's in his nature. You can't get it's Scorpion and the Frog situation. Like, that's what he does. But I looked at him and I'm like, I don't need to learn any more languages. He's like, why, you stupid? I'm like, because you have to learn mine. Because we got all the gold and all the guns and all the bombs. So learn our language, bitch. And I'm gonna take all your fucking croissants. Don't hate America for being efficient. But here's the interesting thing that happened to me in that moment is as I'm saying these things to him, in my head I'm insecure. Like my inner monologue is like, why don't you know more languages? But outwardly I'm like singing the national anthem, I'm holding a gun to his head, I'm pissing on him. And I'm like, America! But in my mind I'm like, what's wrong with you, Owen? Are you stupid? Like, why don't you know any languages? Like, you should learn a language. So I did. I started learning Spanish. Spanish is a beautiful language. And I'm friends with a lot of Hispanic people, really funny people, just funny. You know, they'll bust your balls. I used to open for Julio Iglesias. Yeah, some people just laugh at that. They're like, I'm like, no, for real. Like 5,000 Hispanic women that couldn't speak English. And I'm following the guy who sings just crooning songs. And I just be like, hey, everybody. And they're just like, gringo stupido, you know. Like, blanco diablo. And I'm like, does anyone here adopt a dog? And they're like, yeah. But I would get them though. Because they like to be attacked. It's in the culture. The whites don't get that. They're like, don't make fun of Jose. Jose's like, you are a queer. So I started learning Spanish. And the thing that threw me for a loop about Spanish is well, I'll just tell you the story. So I'm looking at the moon and I'm trying to impress my Mexican buddies, my employees, gardeners. But I became very fond of them. And I wanted them to approve of me. For some reason, I was seeking their approval, ironically. Because they just seemed like they had a better vibe going on than I did. Like, I was like giving them rat shit money and they're just digging holes. That they were like smiling and I was like really sad. So it's a metaphor for life. So I'm like, I'm looking at the moon. I'm like, El Luna. Just trying to show that I'm not ignorant anymore. And they're like, La Luna. I'm like, oh, La Luna. Yeah, my bad. Aprendo. I'm like, what is La Luna? What does La mean? He's like, the. I'm like, oh, so what did El mean? He's like, the. Do you see your error? And I'm like, that's the thing is native speakers of Romance languages have no idea how weird that is. Because in English, it's just the. You know, there is La or El. And I'm like, how do you know the difference? Like, what is La? And he's like, La Luna, not El Luna. It's weird. La Luna. I'm like, why? He's like, because the moon has a pussy. That's not a quote. He didn't say a quote unquote. He says a feminine noun, right? So I'm like, the moon is a woman, it's a female noun. It's like, that's La Luna, not El, female, feminine. I'm like, why is the moon a woman? And then it started making sense. This is the beauty of ancient knowledge. It really starts ringing true. You're like, at first you're like, that's just the moon. In English, everything's the. It's almost like German. You're like, the. You know, the moon, there is nothing matters. You know, everything's an object. They're like, La Luna is more than an object. That is La Luna. And I'm like, it is, because it draws you like a woman does. It pulls at you. It pulls the tie, just subtle. Like wolves and coyotes just get so horny, they just start screaming at it. You know, they just look in the night sky and they're like, "Ooh," you know, and the moon's like, no. And they're like, hey, we'll still be here. Ooh. And I'm like, that's crazy. And I'm like, and it inspires people to write poetry. People just write poetry. You go crazy over the moon, just like a woman. That's why it's called becoming a lunatic. That's where it comes from. Dead serious. Lunacy. Just like being in love, you know? And then you realize it has a 28-day monthly cycle. That's insane. Just like a woman, you know? It gets big and bright, ovulates, real good mood, then goes dark for a while, you know? It gets real dark. But she's always there. You know, she needs her space, but she's always hanging out, always watching you. Just out of, you know, a little out of reach, but she's there. La Luna, the woman. And my favorite animal is clearly bears, so yeah. Bears are awesome. I've always loved the bears. Recently someone was like, so when did you come up with this bear thing? I'm like, always. Like, I was always called Big Bear. I was always about bears. You know, growing up I had bears, so I'm always like bear, but I didn't want to assume gender because you get in trouble these days. You know, so I didn't want to just say what I thought it was. I was like, La Oso, the bear, but I'm modern. And they're like, El Oso. I'm like, the bear's got a dick? They're like, yeah, bears have dicks. And that made sense because bears are very male animals. They're really big and frightening and hairy and strong, but they're also like almost pathetically awkward, and they look comical in like a funny outfit. You know, you put them on a little unicycle, it's hilarious, but then they'll bite your face. Very male. And just like men, they really want to provide for their families, but they don't always have a good plan because men are task-oriented and they only think in straight lines. Problem, solution, blowjob, just one line. So we don't plan ahead like women sometimes know how to do. So we're like, I'm gonna get fish for my women. And so then the bear leaves his cave with his woman and his little cubs. He's like, I'm gonna get you a fish. But he doesn't have a plan. He doesn't invent a fishing pole or anything. He's like, I'm gonna do it with my heart. And he just goes to the stream and he doesn't know how to do it. So he just starts beating the shit out of water. He's like, yeah, yeah. And the fish are just like, what the fuck? And then finally one just commits suicide, jumps in his mouth. They're like, fine. He's like, ah. Everyone's like, what? He's high-fiving. And he brings the fish back. He's like, baby, look, I got you a fish. And she's like, great, that's great. He's like, yeah, I've earned myself a nice 7-month nap, you know, like one-eyed Gary over here. And so he goes to sleep in a little cave, and he doesn't come out for a while. And I was like, that's very male, you know? And then I started looking at my house that I'm so proud of because I bought a house from jokes, or as the Spanish say, hoax. No one here speaks Spanish, I just realized that. You guys have no idea what hoax, all right, that's fine. But, so I'm looking at my house, and it's hard, you know, it's hard making a living in entertainment. And I got to buy a house for my family that I own. I'm like, I own that house from being that funny. Yeah. And then I'm like, that's my house. That's my house. And the French guy's like, you think you're funny? I'm like, show me your acreage from being funny. That's mine. He's like, croissant? I'm like, yeah, totally, croissant. And so I'm looking at this house with so much pride. And then my Spanish lessons kicked in, and I was like, La Casa. It's not my house, it's my wife's house. I don't know that at all. Oh, thank you, brother. Oh, you're the best. Beers, Saranac Lake. So I'm looking at this, I'm like, it's La Casa, it's my wife's house. And I realized that's hers, and she deserves it, you know? I bought it, but she made it a home. I have a mortgage, which in French means a death grip, mortgage. Dead serious. And then I realized that if I mess up and I come home like a bad bear just covered in honey, I'm sticky. She's like, you get out of here, big bear. And I'm forced to live in el apartamento. Adios, puto. An apartment is male. How hilarious is that? And then I started thinking the trans movement must have a real hard time with Spanish. They assign gender to everything. Imagine 70 of those. Like, how does that work? The trans movement's hilarious because it's hilarious. Someone just went, psh, yeah, we'll see. Wait till you hear these jokes. I'm about to fuck you up. But so, you don't have to, thank you, but. So my buddy is a nuclear physicist. I hang out with a lot of physicists and like just oddly smart people that are like kind of on the spectrum, you know? They're like so smart, they don't know how to like wear pants. And this dude said some of the funniest stuff to me. He goes, Caitlyn Jenner is Woman of the Year, but hasn't been a woman for a full year. And I could see him running numbers. And I'm dying laughing. He's like, why are you laughing? He's like, Caitlyn Jenner times fraction of 1 is less than 1. She does not qualify for Woman of the Year if you haven't been a woman for a full year. And I'm like, dude, will you open for me on the road? He's like, and he does. He's having a comedian. He is now. I made him a comedian. His name's Kevin Hickerson, right? He's like, so what do I do? I'm like, just say things that you think are normal. They'll laugh. Because you just navigated the biggest minefield in the world with a TI-83, you sick bastard. Another time he said, if I was a criminal in Gotham, I would commit crimes on clear nights. And I'm like, go on. He goes, because the bat symbol requires reflection off clouds. So if there are no clouds in the sky, the bat symbol would go into the universe for infinity with photons. And there would be no alert to the only person who could stop me as a criminal. So on a clear night, they would try to alert the Batman and he would not receive the message and I would keep the money. And I'm like, will you say that on stage? Because the gay stuff is so funny to me because so many of my friends are gay. I lived in LA 16 years. Like a lot of me and Amy's best friends are like married gay guys. And the funniest part about married gay guys is usually one of them really wants kids and the other one wants to just keep going to raves. And so they don't really have kids. So they then will just shower your kid with like really expensive like train conductor outfits. So for the first year we were here, Walter would be running around and people were like, what's your kid dressed like? I'm like, yeah, it's like a $1,000 train conductor outfit sent from one of our friends in LA. Like, and they're just like, how's he look? I'm like, you guys are really intense. And I'm obviously very tolerant of gay. Like, I would not want anyone to not have the rights I have. I believe that whatever I get to do in this wonderful country of ours, everyone should have the right to do and not be held back because you're gay. That being said, getting a little annoying though. You know, because I'd be in LA, and it's fine being gay. Get married. I'll be your best man. Let's do it, Dave Rubin. And that's fine. It's about rights. I don't want any more rights than anyone else. But that being said, they say some real messed up stuff to the straights these days. You know, like just weird stuff. Like, how do you lick a vagina? Ugh. And I'm like, because I don't want to say anything, because I don't want to sound homophobic. I don't want to defend myself, because that would be full of hate. So this guy keeps going on and on. This is a true story. This guy's oddly famous, and no one knows he's gay. It's hysterical. Like when he's off screen, he's like, hey. He was on screen, he's like, hello. Anyway, he's like, I can't believe you put your wiener in a vagina. Ugh. I start standing up for myself. I go, you know what happens when I put my penis in my wife's vagina? A, it feels unbelievable. B, you wanna know what comes out? Life. I've made a son with my cock, and you know what? I got another one on the way. My wife out there selling merch. She's 21 weeks pregnant. I got another boy on the way. So I put my penis in a vagina, in a beautiful vagina, perfectly formed vagina, straight from the sculpting hands of God himself. You know what comes out? Life. You wanna know what comes out of where you put your cock? Shit. Only shit. Life will never come out of a man's ass. But don't think I don't know loving a man. I love men. borderline in love sometimes. I'm like, sometimes I'll know a man, I'm like, I want to be everything. I love him so much. Like my brother, I love my brother to the point where like when I see him, I get butterflies in my stomach. I'm like, my brother. Okay, so let me tell you something. This is the thing about the gay stuff a little bit though. So it's brave for a man to be like, I love him so much, I'm gonna jam my cock right in his asshole. That's the brave angle. That's fine if you wanna do it. But I love men so much, I'm trying to swat things away from their asshole. Get out of here. And then the guy's like, thanks, man. I almost took something in my ass. A snake was there. I'm like, get out of here, snake. Not a gay guy. He's like, I love him so much, I'm just gonna jam something in his ass. So that's fine. I'm not full of hate. I'm just pointing out. If you want to talk shit about the vagina, I'm gonna fucking point out what you're up to, you little sodomite. And it's an interesting life. It's weird. Sometimes people criticize me and be like, why are you like that? Just say the things that make people happy. I'm like, you don't think I want to? I can't lie because I don't know who I am, you know? So I wanted to be into Black Lives Matter because black people have had a rough run in America. Real rough run. Slavery, horrifying. Jim Crow. Then they had Jerry curls, you know? They had a series of very unfortunate events. They were starting the race in the back. And so I tried to get into Black Lives Matter. And I did my research. I'm like, how can I really help black lives? What is really hurting black people in the world? I'm not talking about just the US, the whole world. This is a global community. So I looked it up. Want to know what kills the most black people? 500,000 black people a year die of malaria. Right, yeah, so I did what I had to do. I went right to Ace and I got myself a bunch of tiki torches. Because I wanted to fight mosquitoes. Because I actually care. I want to make a difference. Every mosquito I kill is another black baby that may not get malaria. So I showed up to a Black Lives Matter event, holding my tiki torches with all my buddies. We're wearing our best khakis. We want to look really presentable. And we're like, we're here for you guys. And then I was stabbed in a parking lot, so fuck those guys. I was just trying to kill some mosquitoes, man. My wife makes me a better person. I'm almost there. I'm like almost a good person. You know, because I see that with our son. Like she makes him good, I make him fun. You know, like my son, he's like knows rules. He's a good person. It's because of Amy, you know? Like Amy just does it. And my son's like, I'm like, you're good. And then he's like, tequila. We dance tequila. And I'm like, oh, I make you fun. and I give all the gold to mommy. So you don't see that part of it, but I provide all of it. That's all behind the scenes, like Wizard of Oz shit. But in the meantime, let's just run around, you know? And this is a perfect example of how I'm almost a good person. One time I was at a bar. And this guy was being abusive to his girl. And this guy's like, you shut up, bitch. And my like spidey sense goes up. I'm just looking at this dude. You know, I'm not gonna jump in right away because I don't know their dynamic. Might be trying to get hard. There might be a Russian affecting the erection. He's like, let me scream at you a little. She's like, yeah, I like that. But that wasn't the case. He was being an asshole. He's like, you're a stupid bitch. And I'm like, dude, she's just sitting there. She's not even fighting back, bro. What's wrong with you? Because if the chick was like fighting back, I'd be like, whatever. But she was just like, and he's like, yeah, you cry, bitch. And I'm like, that's it. So I get up. I get right in his face. I'm huge. You guys can't see this from far away, but I'm literally like a mythical cyclops. And so I go to the dude, I'm like, hey, you don't talk to that bitch like that. Because I didn't know her name and I was hammered. So I just repeated the last thing I heard. And they both just looked at me like, she was just looking at me like, thanks? And I'm like, this bitch is just sitting there. You're gonna try to do it to me, bitch. Don't do it to that bitch. And they both just started mocking me. Like their fight was over immediately and they're like, this guy's an idiot. I'm like, you know, there's no hero today. I got a Fitbit because I want to be more active. You know, your metabolism slows down a little bit. You lose like a 1/4 inch of penis if you get a little bit of fat down there. It's a little tiny sliver of penis. It was once there. You got to keep the fat tight. You know, you can't have fat because a little bit of fat, you lose a little hammer. You know? And so I got a Fitbit because I want to motivate myself. And I also want to take walking more seriously. And I forgot it was on. my wrist. I masturbated. I got a lot of valuable stats. It turns out it takes exactly 1.2 miles to come for me. Every time. I don't know what that is in metric, but. And my wife's such a good mom. And this is the thing, we're pregnant. See, that's the thing, is like, I'm already saying we and stuff, but I'm into it, man. It's like, pregnancy is so intense. The second pregnancy, I'm a lot kinder to her than the first one. Because the first one, I didn't really get it. I hadn't seen the full run. So she'd be like, I'm nauseous. I'm like, me too, I'm hammered. Do you not think I'm nauseous? I just had a firebomb with Herman. But now she's like, I'm nauseous. I'm like, dude, whatever you need, because I saw childbirth, and childbirth is humbling if you're a man, because when you see that baby come out of your wife, you realize your dick never mattered ever. It was all in your head. It was all a weird game. And I loved her even more for that, because for a while I looked at her, I'm like, thanks for pretending that was blowing your mind. Because she used to be like, yeah, I can barely handle this cock. And I'm like, yeah, I'm the man. And then I can see that she can take, 1,000 of them. And she was just doing that for me and my own ego. And I loved her for it. I'm like, baby, thanks for giving me 5 years where I legit thought I was something special. It's impressive. I can't take a catheter to my dick hole. It hurts. I had to get surgery once. I was like, let me piss my pants. Because it hurt too much. They put a catheter in my dick hole. I was like, whole different vibe. And she breastfeeds, which is good. We got to breastfeed your kids is a really healthy thing to do. And so we'd be lying in bed. And this is, male feminists are dads. A male feminist is all the men in this room that didn't abandon their families when they heard those cries early on. Because it's, because they just cry. And that's why we get them a diamond engagement ring. At first, I didn't get it. I'm like, this is a waste of money. Resale value on this is what? 1%? Are you crazy? But it's supposed to be irrational. You're supposed to do something just for nothing. You're supposed to just burn something you love. That's the entrance into the kingdom, because then you see how irrational marriage gets. I'm a big bear. I need a hard 9 every night. 9 hours. I'm out. And then this kid just started crying. I started almost resenting a baby, which is not good. I knew that was a wrong emotion, so I was trying to analyze why I was doing that. I'm like, why is he messing with me? And then I realized he's not messing with me. He doesn't even know shapes or colors exist. And then I started having a lot of respect for what he was doing, because he, at any hour of any night, was just demanding whatever he wanted. And at that point, I was feeling like a bit of a coward in my career. I wasn't saying what I really believed, I would just sit back like a coward. And I see this newborn baby in this world just saying exactly what he wants. In the middle of the night, just out of nowhere, he'd be like, wake up! Give me your tit, bitch! And that, he didn't say it literally, but that's me translating baby. And for those of you that don't have kids, it's way more violent and aggressive than that. I'm downplaying it. He's like, give me your tit now! Now, I want your tits now. Give me that tit now. Put it in my mouth. And I'm like, what is going on? And the craziest part is it works. My wife, who's a very strong woman, is just like, okay. And I'm looking at her like, you don't do that when I do that. And my baby has the tit now. And he's just looking at me. He's not breaking eye contact. He's just sucking it. He's just... I was so proud. I gave him a nod. And then I threw on the handy Fitbit and I went upstairs and, ran some intervals. We're at a museum once. Me and Amy, we just had the baby in him. And she was like, we're just looking at tapestries. And I'm crazy horny. We hadn't had sex in a while. But we still have the vibe. That's torturous when you're still very attracted to each other, but she's leaking or sore or some shit. And I'm just like, it's like, we're both want it, but there's just a roadblock for a while. I was getting a lot of jizz aggression. But I was keeping it cool. And then we're looking at some tapestry, and she was like, I really need to pump. I'm like, yes. I'm like, where? Like right behind the tapestry? Let's take it 13th century. And she's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, pump. She's like, no, I have to breast pump. I'm like, the hell's that? She's like, well, when my breast gets so full of milk, it aches, and I have to pump. And I was like, this is a teachable moment. So I was like, baby, that's exactly how my balls feel, but it's cum. Like it aches. And she's so cool that she's like, that's what it feels like? I'm like, that's exactly what it feels like. Now you know what it feels like to you gotta pump because they're so full of jizz that you're like losing your mind. It like aches. And she's like, oh, I have so much more compassion now knowing that. I'm like, yes. And I thought no sex came from this conversation at all. But at least she got it. Like I tried putting my wiener in the breast pump and it was really uncomfortable. It was not designed for me. I'm gonna play you guys some music. You got in this world, in this time, you got to be kind to each other. You know, you got to learn what bothers people and to do the right thing. I'll play that for you, bud. Don't say midget. It hurts them. They prefer to be called People McNuggets. That's it. That's the whole joke. So I wrote a song called the Racism Song. Yeah, don't feel uncomfortable. There's people out there uncomfortable. It's time to end you being a coward. This is just words. All right, so this is called the Racism Song because I think there's a lot of misunderstandings about what is racist because it's not about race, it's about culture. Here we go. It's called the Racism Song. Black dudes with more than one pit bull scare the shit out of me. But a black guy with a cell phone on his belt, I trust. That's it. Give me any race, I'll do it. Anybody? Indian? Indians after one beer on a reservation scare the shit out of me. But an Indian that's on my lacrosse team in '93, I trust. Give me another, anybody, any race. Mexicans? Mexicans working out in their front yard scare the shit out of me. But a Mexican that says, La Luna, I trust. Give me another one. Hit me. Huh? What? North Korean? Only one North Korean scares the shit out of me. And if his Supercuts hairdresser slices his throat, I'll trust him. He goes in there, he's like, make me look like a man's penis head. All right, give me another race. Who? Armenians? Armenians that are within 100 yards of a Turkish person scare the shit out of me. But an Armenian that is selling me a Mercedes, I trust. You're going to want this one, buddy. Give me another one. Jews? Jewish people that are in charge of the Federal Reserve scare the shit out of me. But a Jew named Ben Shapiro, I trust. Give me another one. Japanese? Ever since 45, none of them scare the shit out of me. They're like, we are just going to watch cartoon. Bye. Give me another one. Who? Kenyans? Kenyans from that movie, The Gods Must Be Crazy, who don't have that Coke bottle scare. I don't know how it is. Kenyans that can't run a marathon under 2 hours fucking scare the shit out of me. But a Kenyan that can run it in 150, I trust. Give me one more. Russians. Russians scare the shit out of me. Russians are the toughest people on the planet, man. You know, I'm always scared of Muslims on public transportation. You know, you see a sweaty Muslim, you're like, can you stop praying, bro? It's like, but a Russian, everywhere you see him, it's like, hello. I'm like, oh, Jesus. They're scary. And people think Trump's in bed with Putin. Putin probably thinks Trump's a pussy. He's like, why do you let CNN mock you? Kill Anderson Cooper, sodomite. Like Russians are like, we will poison our own well. We kill your dog to stay warm. Okay, it's kind of like Saturday Night Live in a weird way. It's almost like people get funnier the colder you go, and then there's one line where it just becomes psychotic. You know, like in LA, people aren't as funny because there's no conflict. It's between 78 and 82 every day, so you get a bunch of indoor cats wearing women's pants. And then you come to Saturday Night Live, New York, and you have enough problems where you have to make light of it or you get too sad. But we were still, you know, happy, I guess. And then you go to Russia, and it's just so cold. They're like, no punchline, just knife. And you're like Stalingrad fell. You're like, all right, so here's another song. That got weird. All right, so I like some hip hop music. You know, like I always liked Eminem because he made white people feel like we had black people confidence. Remember when 8 Mile came out? Every white kid got a hood. Just like every white kid just started limping or something. He's like, and that's a badass riff. You want to know what that is? A lot of hip hop does that. It's a half note. Why not? It's Jaws. It's scary. So is the Old Dirty Bastard. Jaws. It's all just scary, you know. And so hip hop's very aggressive. And after I had a kid, I started liking rock and country a little more because it made me less terrified. You know, because hip hop's like, if you had one shot or one opportunity, would you take it? Would you kill everybody? My mom made me spaghetti. I puked it on my own sweater already. My mom sucks. And then you listen to country and it's like, I love my mom and I know that God is watching out for me. And it's like, I am God. I am Hova. I have my own shoe line. I call women whores and I'll shoot a man and brag about it. I love my daddy. He picks me up in a Chevy truck. I don't know who the fuck my dad is. He abandoned me when I was a child. That's what I did too. And I brag about it. I call women whores. And I'm a bad, bad dude. I lost my dog sometime. I killed your dog. I killed your dog for the hell of it because my buddies thought it was funny because we're in a gang. Me and my church give food to the home. I sell the same people crack. Because I will take anything I want from this world because I deserve it. I'll take it from the 1% because I am Bernie fucking Sanders. So it's really important having a family because they keep you kind of grounded. Like sometimes I get so wound up. My brother would be like, you're way too wound up. Man, the world's a good place. We got to get people to come together. I'm like, you're right, we should. So, because we have a lot more in common than we have not in common. Is that what I should say? Apart? We have more in common than not in common. Like we all have hands, feet, and faces. And so I started thinking about a group of people that I've been mocking this whole show, and I feel really bad about it. And I was like, I put myself in their shoes, and I'm like, I bet no one was good to them. You know, maybe no one wrote them a song. Maybe it's time someone wrote them a song. So I did. I wrote a song for a group of people that I thought I had nothing in common with, but after putting myself in their shoes, I really get it. So this is a song for those guys. Let's all just come together. There is a man who's afraid of dairy, and he's proud of the fact his balls never got hairy. Lucky he can't give the D, 'cause he's got low T. Trump tweets give him PTSD, and he thinks all dudes should sit to pee. It's time. He's a BuzzFeed foodie blogger, which means he's unemployed. And he's always pissy and a bit bitchy, 'cause he is bloated from soy. He's a soy boy, he's so annoyed. He's a soy boy, he feels no joy. A weak chin and soft hands and a lot of demands. He's got mammary glands. He says his cat is trans 'cause of all that soy. He's a soy boy, and he's awful to be around. He thinks Sean King is black, and Caitlyn Jenner is a brave and beautiful chick. His ankles are thick, and he really thinks Colin Kaepernick should have been a first-round pick. His invisible best friends are all black. I'll protect you, Jamarcus. He thinks differing opinions are attacks, and even Alexa and Siri won't call him back. He's an ally to women when he's marching in the streets. But don't drink with them ladies. He's Hillary on Facebook, but he's creepy Bill in the sheets. He's a soy boy, he's so annoyed. He's a soy boy, he feels no joy. His gender is soy, his opinions are soy. He's soy cum-sized, and he's always pissed at he's a socialist. And he's awful to be around. I hope you fucking get kicked out of college. That's called Soy Boy. That's my act of empathy. So I'm a big fan of Beethoven. It's a really good song. It's called Moonlight Sonata. It goes like this. And it's so gentle. It's like, it literally feels like moonlight, and it's so mellow. But all we've known really is this song, and it's beautiful, but I like to get a big picture of the world. And that comes right after a crazy song. The first movement of Moonlight Sonata goes like this, and I've never played it standing up, so I don't know, this is kind of dicey, but I'll give it a shot. This is the beginning of Moonlight Sonata, for real. They've earned the right. That mania came before this, because it's just and then I'm sorry, And I like having a big picture of people, and I think I love history. And my brother and I lost a buddy, a Marine, last year, and one of my other buddies said that a warrior only dies when people stop whispering their name. And so I'm gonna say the names of a lot of famous people. They're not ever going to be forgotten because they're famous, but what has been forgotten is behind every great man is a great penis. More like in front of a great man. In front of a great man is a great penis. There's some monsters on this list. When I say great, I don't just mean good. Amplitude, big. So let's stop being so serious, and let's just let's just give props to a lot of great penises, to a lot of great people. These are the men who built civilization, motivated by their penises. Napoleon Bonaparte, Vincent van Gogh, Johann Sebastian Bach. And of course, the great thinker, his penis was simply named Cockroaches. Engorged Washington, A. Boneham Dinklin, Warren G. Hardon. Of course, there's Alexander Hammerpants, Barack O'Boner, George W. Bush, W stood for wiener, George H.W. Bush, H.W. stood for hard wiener. And of course, Donald J. Pump and his vice president, Mike Penis. Stephen Handjobs. Elon Tusk. Can't forget Nikola Testicle. Wayne Gretzky. Mao Zedong. Attila the Hung. Genghis Khan. Julius Pleaser. Nelson Mandingo. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. Jimmy Fallis. He's like, hey, no way, I'm Jimmy Fallis. I'm having such a good time being Jimmy Fallis. My best friend's Justin Limpersnake. We suck each other off. Throb Dylan. Of course, you can't forget Dick Jagger. Spank Sinatra. Tom Wanks. Brad Piss. And Gorge Puny. And of course, you can't forget the greatest man who ever lived, Jesus H. Christ, and the H stood for huge, because everyone who ever knew him knew that Jesus was hung like this. Owen Benjahammer. Dude, me and my wife had to use flashcards. You know how hard it is to remember all those? Oh, man, Herbie Hand on Cock. Alfred Hitchcock and balls. You got to pause for and balls. All right, this next one. Get him a beer! I'm almost done. Then we'll hang out. We'll party. But this next song, you know, I've never done this on stage before. And because I don't like to be vulnerable. I like to talk about things I've been through. But this is something that happened to me once in my life. You know, I remember just coming out of a place, and I was like, something doesn't feel right. I'm like, is that the tree? I know that's the tree I chained my bike on. Did I rollerblade here? Oh, no, wait, I'm not a gay guy. No, it's not possible. Did I walk here? No, it's 20 miles away. I couldn't walk. I know my bike was there. Is that guy on my bike? Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry, sir, it was a horse. I thought that was my bike. That looks a lot like my bike over there. A black guy sitting on it, and I don't want to sound racist. They've been through so much. I don't want to accuse another black man of a crime he didn't commit. That'll make me just as bad as the crime itself. But that does look a lot like my bike. It has my name written on it, and that's my handwriting. And that's my Justin Trudeau calendar in the front. Those are my custom spokes. I gotta say something, but I don't want to be offensive. Oh, and just have the strength. That nigga stole my bike! I really need my bike. It's Mike Tyson's Punch Out, by the way. That nigga stole my bike. I can make it even longer. That nigga stole my bike! You can have my bike. Thank you. I never got my bike back. Well, that was really fun. So this is how we're gonna close the show tonight. Me and my brother, are you still here? Should we get my brother back on stage? Brother, you got beers? Brother, will you get beers? That honky got some beers. I really love my brother. We'll just close on this. From the bottom of our hearts, we're about to go do a real cheers next door at the bar, and we'll hang out here because there's going to be some beers and some food, and we'll all hang. I love you guys. I'm Owen Benjamin. This is my brother Jason. I no longer need to get my bike back. I'm complete. Give it up for Saranac Lake.